What's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. Welcome to me, and let's just get right into it. Last time I tried to do a segment, I don't think it worked out so well. Somehow, me just vamping to the camera seems to just go a little bit better, even though it's still a little painful to watch. It's something that I'm just gonna have to look back on in 10 years and be like, oh, geez, remember how that was? So maybe it's just fun watching the journey together. Who knows? I don't know. But, how was your weekend? Hopefully you did something fun. I get to do a barbecue with some of my buddies, and that was awesome. It's so great. As I'm recording this right now, it's April, and the weather's starting to get a little warmer. So having food out on the grill is just a different flavor to it. It just, oh my god, what a difference. Whether it's meat or veggies, I don't want to single out people depending on what they eat for the meat. It's interesting that I bring that up just because there was something that I was just listening to a podcast about, and he was realizing just all the problems that are going on with fish because there were so many people that were getting pescatarian or is it pescatarian? I feel like I'm combining Presbyterian and but eating fish. You know what I'm trying to say. I had the word before, but you want to really look at what you're putting into your body. I'm realizing that more and more. Tell that to my 20-year-old self when I would, put in anything in my body to make it feel better, not caring what the long-term effects were. And now I'm worried about, how much um, mercury and plastic is in the fish, much less what it's doing to the ocean floor, much less what it's doing to my body. That's something I learned in the anti-inflammatory diet is that for some reason I just don't do as well with fish as I originally thought. Now the jury's still out on the lobster because with the lobster I had it while I was testing myself, and that one could go either way. To be honest, it could also be the entire stick of butter that I melted to dip it in. So, although fats are good for you, just so you know, butter is actually not as bad for you. It's the sugars, it's salt. It's sad to say the olive oil. Not no, not olive oil. Pure virgin olive oil is actually pretty good. The vegetable oil. No, God, I'm all over the place. Margarine. God, it took a while to get there, but margarine as opposed to butter. There's so much artificial stuff that you're putting in there to make it have the same consistency as butter. It's just do butter, just do fat. Fats are good. The fats are something that our body was made to imbibe. So, pardon me, I'm just all over the place. And so I'm in a bit of a mood, bit of a mood too. So I basically wasted an entire half hour yesterday trying to do a animal video for you guys because everything seemed like it was going fine. I finish and it turns out the audio wasn't recording. So as many of you know, I'm using a subpar setup here, and so apparently even though the camera, the webcam that I'm talking to you, was plugged in and working and the blue light and all that stuff, and it was getting video, it didn't get audio, and there's no explanation for it. I tried a hundred different things before I just did the age-old thing of just unplugging it and plugging it back in again. Boom, it worked. So if you guys are out there and you're just thinking of starting your own, whether you have decent equipment or not, take the extra couple seconds to just do a quick little test 1 2, click, watch it, see what you see, and then go from there because a couple of seconds will save you half an hour. So I don't even know what I'm going to do with that one. I have been saving some of the videos that I petered out halfway through, or I screwed up and I said something that I wasn't supposed to, and so I've been thinking about just saving them all in a folder and eventually doing a bloopers episode, which would be fun, just watching all the times that I just effed up. Some of these are actually just done in one take, but a lot of them are done after multiple takes of me going, hey, click, and I think that that'd be funny to watch a montage of those. That's when I actually get good at editing and being able to piece videos together. But I have all those saved in a folder. The audio one, though, I don't know. Should I just delete it? Because honestly, what's going to be the point of watching? For those of you who are just listening, I was just obviously miming me doing a podcast for a couple of seconds. I'm sure you could have figured it out, but I know that a lot of people are doing this audio only. It's almost like radio's back. It's kind of weird, isn't it? Like you're actually doing just the audio, jogging or even working. That's one cool thing about my new work. I am allowed to listen to whatever I want to. It has a shop with a lot of machines on it, so everybody's already expected to wear ear protection anyway. So if you have noise canceling earbuds and you throw those in, you can listen to music, you can listen to podcasts while you work, as long as you're still able to hear when somebody's talking to you, or in my case, when I have to answer the phone. So that's been awesome, but unfortunately, I have been burning through some of my most favorite podcasts, most of them comedy podcasts. I'm not too into true crime. I worry that I might get a little too into it because I definitely have people recommend them to me, and it definitely seems to be a very big genre for podcasts. But I don't know. It's something that I wax and wane in and out of being interested in stuff like that. It does depend on if it's a humorous one. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but there's one where it's a guy who is genuinely into this stuff, and then a guy that is kind of like plays the devil's advocate, and their chemistry is just awesome together. And that one I just binge watched the crap out of, and so I don't even know if they're doing new videos anymore because ironically I binge watched it on Hulu instead of on where I normally do podcasts, either Spotify or YouTube. So I am more of a fan of the comedy ones, but there's only so many comedians doing podcasts in a day when you're listening to over 8 hours straight. Because if you think about it, I throw the earbud in, on the way to work, and then I also listen to it, on the way out of work. So at first I was just downloading 8 hours of podcasts, and then I realized, oh my God, no, 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 you're not counting in, you're not factoring in the unpaid lunch, you're not factoring in the drive time, and also if it's the morning and I'm walking the dog, I usually throw that in. So I mean, we're talking about like a good 10 hours of podcasts I got to download, each day. And I have to download them because I actually don't get service at my work. So I need to already have them pre-record, pre-downloaded on Spotify. So at first it was fun. Now it's like I've already watched, gone through um, their whole library, and now I'm just desperately waiting for new the new week to drop. So if you guys have a funny or interesting podcast that you like to listen to, reach out in the comments. If and when I end up getting comments, that'd be awesome to hear from some people that might have suggestions of their own favorite podcasts. And just because I'm not interested in true crime at the moment doesn't necessarily mean that you don't. You could definitely throw that out there. I might eventually get around to looking at one. I just the rabbit holes that you dive down in. You want to be able to selectively, if you have an addictive personality like I do, which ideally, if you're gonna be successful in life, in a way, you do want to have a bit of an addictive personality. Um, if you find something that you're into that you just want to go full bore into, in a way that's an addiction. And so, unfortunately, it's so much easier to go into one that is negative for your health and mental and social life. If it's just something that feels good and just, hits that dopamine gland. But if you can find something that, activates those neurons, but is something positive that you just, really want to just dive full in and just get obsessed with and get better at, well, that's great. What if you find out that you're obsessed with piano, or there's so many arts that I wish that I was better at, that I had been able to focus more when I was developing all of those neurons. Now if I did it, it would be almost like playing catch up, which I'm fine with at this point. I'm fine with if I am a decent enough like, all right, let's say, so piano is an example. Like, I would absolutely love if I get decent enough that I could go to an airport piano, sit down and play it, and not suck. Just somebody would be impressed, where it's just like, holy crap, that person has some good piano playing in them, enough to be able to just do it on command, I guess, as you could say. I would love to be able to um, drawing was a big one that I never really got into. Like, That takes a lot of time putting, pen to paper. The only hand-eye coordination I ever had growing up was playing video games, and even that was very basic. We didn't have, when I grew up, like I'm dating myself, but like literally there was a up, down, left, right, and then there was two buttons. And now you have one where um, I'm gonna get political, but I prefer the PlayStation one where it's very intuitive, where you can do the two fingers, you can do the two thumbs, and you can do the buttons, you can do the joysticks, you can do the double joysticks. It's all right where your hand would already want to be, and for some reason, the way that it's shaped, you actually have a lot of gripping strength with just those two downward, these two fingers. So that's the one that I definitely enjoy, and I did get into that for a bit, but I'm kind of glad that I did get eventually away from gaming. It is a time suck. It's not a bad time suck, and good God, when I look at some of the games that are coming out now, it's like, God, did I go the wrong route and just dump all of the money that I've been trying to save into just doing that? Because I mean, honestly, I might be a little happier. Like you want to think about mental health more than anything, especially these days. It's just the lives and times and the future is uncertain, and especially if you think about the whole fish thing that I was talking about earlier, we might outfish ourselves by 2040, and after that there's just no coming back from it. It isn't like that we would have any crazy piece of technology that the scientists could suddenly develop in the back nine in order to save us. It's just what it is. Like now we just don't have any fish that can breathe in the ocean because we are just destroying all of that. There's no longer schools of fish keeping the currents going. um, that's not even to talk about global warming. Whether or not you agree that it exists, I mean, isn't it getting kind of hard to explain away the insane weather that we're having? And that's what I love is just when it's the coldest of winter, like recently, not recently, at this point probably about a month ago, Texas had a cold snap that decimated them for a while. And it's just like, oh, how about global warming, huh? Texas is freezing. Well, it's going to be fluctuations. I mean, honestly, I'm not going to convince anybody, so I don't even know why I'm getting into it. But it's something that always drives me nuts. If somebody looks at a cold weather for an example, and it's just the day after tomorrow, was it a great movie? No, but did it have a point? Yeah. It's like, wait a minute. So you're saying that global warming could actually make us freeze, and it's like even though science was completely like bonkers on that one, there's a bit of truth to that. It isn't like the days are going to progressively get hotter, and so we notice like, oh, last April, uh, you know, April 20th, shout out 420. It was 76 degrees, and then it was 77, and then the year after, oh, now it's 78. It isn't going to be like that. It's going to be a excuse me, a gradual progression of it getting wild and wilder, fluctuating until we're getting into unlivable extremes of both warm and cold. And yes, eventually, warmth. I mean, and that's as far as I know. I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I could just be talking about my butt. But you know, I guess here's where it's gonna get weird. I guess I wouldn't say that I'm a religious person. And I know this is such a cop out. I'm maybe more of a spiritual person. I do believe that there is more than just this collection of flesh and bones to me. I believe there's more than just physics to the outside world. I feel like, there's not necessarily a transubstantial being that is looking down and watching over us and, informing decisions. But I definitely feel like there's more to the fabric of space time that we're learning every day. So, I mean, even science is backing me up. So, I don't get why science and religion can't just, find a middle ground because there's definitely more than we're aware of. And if anything, isn't science, in a way, a sort of religion where it's just like, I don't have any concrete proof, but I do believe that there's an answer out there. Well, so there's some people that are, like religious. My point is, there's some people that are religious for the reason being, well, there could be a heaven, there could not be a heaven, but doesn't it just make sense that just in case there is a heaven, like to live your life as a good person, and then when you die, if there's a heaven, you're like, yay, okay, I made the right choice and I lived a good life. And if you die and you were wrong and there's nothing, well, what's the consequence there? That you lived a good life? You know, that's the argument. Now, in my case, by cynical self, the loud LeeLoo, everybody, itching her neck because she doesn't know what else she wants to do. She's not actually itchy, she's just bored. And that's her collar jingling, in case you caught that on the audio. But anyway, just shout out to LeeLoo. So, I don't think that that's a good reason to be a good person. You should want to be a good person because you want to be a good person. It isn't like, oh, I was going to rape, but no, there's a higher power. Well, if that's what it takes to get you to not rape, I mean, yay for religion for now there was one less rape, but it's still kind of a sketchy situation. But I digress. That's kind of how I feel about, global warming and, overfishing and, reliance on oil and all that stuff where it's just like, okay, naysayers, maybe it's not a thing. Maybe global warming is completely a myth. Maybe we can never overfish the ocean. It's always going to autocorrect itself. The ocean is bigger than what we can live on land. So you know what? Maybe that ocean is going to be able to figure itself out and it's going to be just fine. But is it going to kill us to just act as though maybe we should? You know, God, heaven forbid that we, try to not fish a species into extinction. Heaven forbid that we try to reduce our carbon footprint and maybe make the planet like a little bit cleaner. Even if we were wrong, the fact that we did a good thing is I mean like the end result is still the same. Like we did a good thing. Like whether it was going to be a time of crisis or not. Which I'm sorry, but all the evidence is pointing to that we are in a crisis and we're just freaking ostriches with our heads in the sand about it. But, even if we weren't in that crisis mode, like, why is that still not a goal that we all want to strive for? Where it's just like, dude, you know what my generation did? We reduced that human carbon footprint down. It wasn't the crisis that we thought it was going to be, kind of like how COVID ended up being. But, we put things in place now that our children, children's are going to appreciate that we had started the wheels rolling on. It seems like a no-brainer. I mean, I don't know all the uh, red tape about it. I'm sure that it's going to cost us money. But we can just make money, can't we? I mean, didn't we find that out from the pandemic that we can just generate money that didn't exist in the first place and just sink the dollar? I mean, I, I'm sorry. I'm in a mood, and when I get in a mood, I mean, this is like the freaking uncle that drinks and just starts spouting off about politics. But I feel like I'm treading, lightly when it comes to that. It's just like I'm not, talking about Biden. I'm not talking about Trump. I'm not talking about, um, abortion or gender pronouns. I'm just talking about us being able to survive. For if I do have a kid, then maybe that kid or maybe the kid's kid isn't gonna have to suffer for us just being, ostriches with our head in the sand. I hate to keep going back to that, analogy, but as you all know, if you're a fan of this, is like I'm obviously a big animal person. So clearly, I'm going to have some animal analogies in the back pocket, all right? If I talk about what happened on the weekend, it's probably going to involve my dog LeeLoo, all right? I enjoy animals. And having said that, let's just I didn't think it would happen, but I've been so desperate for podcasts. I ended up getting into this podcast. Hello, LeeLoo. Yes, hi. I ended up getting into this podcast, Bloodbath. So I don't know if you know Bobby Lee and his podcast with his girl Kalila, the Tiger Belly, but Kalila ended up doing her own podcast, and so it's three girls just talking to each other, and it's called Bloodbath, and it's one that I didn't really think about, but I was just like, well, you know what, I no offense to I mean, shout out to Tiger Belly, no offense, it isn't exactly like my absolute favorite podcast. It's definitely up there though. I do listen to it. I've listened to pretty much every episode, so hey, shout out to you. But Kalila definitely normally would never have been a um, personality. I guess you could call it. And so because she is in the podcast, with him, she does make a good what do you call it? Uh, something to bounce ideas off of. Someone like to be a compliment to a specific personality. But the point is that she has a lot of good moments in that podcast. So when she started her own, I wasn't, entirely into it. I was just like, oh, good for her. She's doing her own thing. But when I started to be desperate and run out of podcasts, I watched it and I actually quite enjoyed it. And one of my favorite things about it is that they talk about some heavy stuff. I mean, if you just put, a handful of girls, in a room, much like a knitting circle, and by the way, that that is not a um, chauvinistic thing to say about the knitting circle. I was actually just reading something about sewing that I absolutely loved, and so I just got to share this real quick with you. So, all right, fine. If you're that desperate, all right, okay. So I don't normally enjoy having her on the couch on her own. Now, if she's invited up, that's a different story. So this is LeeLoo the Loud that you all hear episodes. She did show up as a brief guest appearance once. I'm not going to have her here for the whole podcast because, believe it or not, there's a good chance that I might actually just pass out while talking to you because, for whatever reason, having her on here is just she's going to pass out and then I'm going to pass out too. Like for whatever reason, we're ambient for each other. But she was desperate for attention. I don't have the chance to play catch with her or take her out for a walk right now because I'm doing this. So I figured this is gonna work out best for everybody. You get to see the cutie. Yeah, she gets to be pacified for a little bit because she's in daddy's lap. And but if you if I get into it in my dog videos about the importance of not allowing them on the couch, this is not me saying do as I say, not as I do. This is the exception that proves the rule. If she comes up and she puts her head in my lap and she wants to get up, oftentimes I'll say no. But if she does come up, it's because I allowed her to. In fact, I physically just picked her up, as you just saw. Look at her looking at you as though she's just like, hey, people of Earth. Or maybe she's just looking at her own video reflection. Do you even know what's going on right now? Who knows? Who cares? You're just like, I don't care. I'm in daddy's lap. I'm happy. I'm content. So, oh God, what was I saying? So, um, I went off on about 10 tangents, but I think the original thing was that with the Bloodbath podcast, they talk about some pretty heavy stuff. And if it gets too heavy, then one of them is allowed to suggest a banana break. And what that is that they're like, okay, it's getting a little bit, intense, so we're just gonna just stop, eat a banana, reset, get some potassium in us, and kind of woosah, and since it was getting a little too heavy, like let's just kind of reset. And I think that that's brilliant. And I think the funniest thing is that I think I'm on episode like either 3 or 4 when they had just been talking about past molestations and stuff, and then one of them was just like, "Oh my God!" So we decided to take the most phallic of fruits for our break. Like it took them talking about molestation, and then like by like episode 3 or 4 before they were like, "Oh wait, eating a banana break, it's like phallic," and I was just like, I'll be honest, as a guy, even though I'm just doing audio only, this whole time I thought that that was like a gimmick where it's just like, oh, banana break. Now we're gonna eat bananas in front of the camera, and it was just like, no, it didn't even occur to them until like that episode, and it's just because it's actually good in potassium. So, I guess what I was trying to get to in that long meandering way is that um, LeeLoo break, LeeLoo break. We're doing a little banana break with LeeLoo, and we'll see if we can get the train back on the rails. But for right now, her and I are just going to give a cuddle for a second while I'm talking to you because, it is rough. She doesn't quite understand how come, Daddy, you're home. I want to play with you, and I would like to play with you too, baby girl. But this is something that Daddy needs to do for his mental health, and, who knows if it pays off. And eventually I can be a stay at home daddy to you. Excuse me. Then won't you be glad that we spent this little extra time, talking to the good folks at home? Hmm? Right? You'll just be like, oh my God, I get to be with Daddy 24/7 just because this ended up taking off. Whether it does or not, I don't. Again, I mean, I'd love for it to, and if I'd be lying if I said I don't care. I'll be completely honest. I do care. It is definitely something that would be a positive in my life. But if it was something I didn't enjoy doing, I would have given up. Baby girl, you're really crushing daddy right now. He's joking. If it's something that I didn't love to do, then I would have already stopped by like episode 3. So it's something that I enjoy doing because when I'm at work or driving to and from work or at home waiting for my other half to get home. There's not really anybody to talk to besides her, and she you know what? That's not fair. You actually give a little bit more back than the blue circle does. But I kind of picture what somebody on the other end of this might be thinking as they watch, and so I try to act accordingly. I had the wrist snapping episode because I didn't like how many times they say and and that one didn't work out so well. I do still say it a lot, but I'm trying to act accordingly. And who knows? Maybe that's something that I'll bring back. Maybe I'll bring back the wrist snapping for the ums and the ahs. And then when I get really good about not doing the ums and ahs, then I can start wrist snapping every time that I touch my frickin' face. Because I know that especially in these days, we're really paying attention to the amount of times that people just, touch and rub their face. I know that I'm a huge fan of Two Bears, One Cave. Shout out to Tom and Bert. Or, Tim and Bart, or however you want to say it. But that there was at least a good 10 minutes discussion on just how many times Bert Kreischer touches his face, and reviewing these just as I'm downloading them. It's hard for me to suffer through watching the entire thing. I mostly just you know click through it and make sure that there's not anything glaringly obvious, like no audio like the last time. I'm still a little bit sore about that. I do apologize. If I come back to that a couple of times this episode, just keep in mind this is a fresh wound where I had what I thought was a pretty kick-ass, um, you know, uh, pod episode about pets, and so I definitely was very upset to replay it, and I was just, oh, no audio. All right, well, let's check the audio. Nope, the audio's on. Okay, well, maybe the audio in the actual video. Nope, the audio's on the video too. What is going on? And so when I finally figured out that it just had literally not recorded any audio, whoo! Ha ha! Cheers. Okay. You mean I just wasted all that time that I could have been doing, doing some dishes, straightening up, getting entertained instead of trying to entertain? You know, um, it felt like it was all for nothing, but it wasn't. It was an important lesson. So any setbacks that you have that happen in your life, it's not a setback. It is a lesson. And now I obviously did two test two test videos. I did test 1 2, and then I was about to get ready to set up, and then it had this little warning on the bottom saying, "Yo, I might not have enough memory to run this because you're running in this on a ancient laptop with a god knows aftermarket video camera." So just so you know, this might get choppy. So I did a little recording of me just test 1 2, test 1 2, blah 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 boo 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 boo, and then replayed it and made sure that it didn't get choppy like it did in my very first episode, which I love that I'm keeping in because it just is going to show the progress where eventually maybe with the amount that I'm saving by not going out and doing stuff, which I don't want to do for the rest of my life. I obviously would like to hopefully vaccines, whatever, herd immunity, whatever. I definitely don't think that we can do this forever because that's not how we were built. I think that I mentioned in one of the dog episodes that with dogs, they don't show affection the same way that we do. So, for instance, if you're sitting next to your dog, like you're fishing off of a pier, and the dog's sitting next to you, and you put your arm around the dog, even if it's a dog that absolutely loves you, there's a pretty good chance that they might just kind of angle away from you a little bit because that's not how they show affection. They don't like that's almost like a dominant move right there. And you don't think that when you are with your dog because as you can tell with her, she just relaxes right. Fine, okay. I know that you're dying for me to do that. There you go. All right, you happy now? I know that you were waiting to see more of her. But obviously, if I put my arm around her, she doesn't shy away from me. In fact, she just kind of settles in, and that's because she's learned that this is how humans show affection, and she's just so latched onto humans, me especially, us especially, that she just knows that hey, this is the time that Daddy is showing affection to me, and that actually calms her down and relaxes her. She's like, "That's what I wanted. I wanted to be known that I'm still part of the pack and I'm still, you know, wanted and accepted." So when we show affection in the ways that we, and I know that I get into dog episodes pretty much every time that I do this hour rant. Well, that's my life, man. I'm a dog lover. What are you gonna do? I mean, do I really have to apologize, or are you guys just waiting for me to get on with it? So a lot of dogs do learn to. I don't know. Here we go. There's somebody outside, not at the door, but she heard it and I heard it. You know what? It's a weird enough noise that I really hate to do this. I don't do this often. I did this once before and it wasn't as funny as I thought it was gonna be, but her and I are both just gonna check this out. I'm gonna keep talking to you while I do this, but okay. So that's what it was. That was adorable. All right, hold on. I'm still talking. I'm still looking. Hold on. All right. So here we go. I'm unlocking the door. I'm doing the opening of the door. Nope. Oh shoot! I just realized. Okay. So that was probably interesting on your end. So this is what happened. Basically, we heard whoo, whoo, whoo outside, very close outside, like like at our mailbox outside, and I was like, "What the hell is that?" So it was enough to distract baby girl and me to the point where it's just like, well, I don't want to stop this because I try to be honest about, like, hey, this is all done in one take. There's no editing going on. Later on, I'm going to be proud of the editing, so it's going to be a little ironic. But for right now, um, I just had to make sure that that wasn't like, my buddy down the street that was, saying, hey, we're here, we're visiting as we go on a walk by. And in this case, it was kind of adorable. It was actually a dad taking a walk with his kid in the stroller. And it's one of the strollers that's facing the parent. So I believe because we live on a dirt road that he was probably going over some bumps. So what he was probably doing was the kid was getting jostled, and so he was going woohoo, woohoo, this is fun, and getting the kid to giggle, and it was actually kind of stinking adorable. And then the hesitation that you heard, if you could hear it, I don't know how well the audio picks up in the distance, but um, that was me debating on, hey, maybe I should just stick her outside, while I finish this off because I know that she would like to, and her favorite thing is to people watch. Like many of us, one of her favorite things to do is just to people watch, not to judge, just to observe, just see how the rest of the world is living, and not to think more or less of the people that they see, but just to be like, hey, look at that person living their life. Oh, another person living their life. I like to watch that. That's her, and I do feel that she doesn't judge, and we should all be more like LeeLoo. But anyway, I was going to let her go out there, and then I realized, actually, she's probably, once I'm done this cast, not overdue for a bathroom break, but she's definitely at that point where she could probably use one. And in the past, she has said to herself, well, I'm outside, I'm on the deck. Granted, it's not the ground, but I mean, I'm outside, and obviously obviously my parents don't want me to be peeing inside the house, but this is outside. So unsupervised, if her bladder's full enough, she doesn't see a problem in going on the deck. And God knows how long it was going on for, because honestly, it wasn't until we had snow on the deck. And normally when there's snow on the deck, I shovel it off because I don't want to get it accumulating and having unnecessary weight on the deck. So who knows how many times and how often she has peed on the deck unsupervised when we've just left her out there to go frolic on the deck. And so we now know that if she has just recently peed, she will be fine. She's one of the dogs that can hold it. She's fine holding it. She isn't just like, ooh, a pinch, and then I'm just going to relieve myself, like a puppy often is going to do. Puppy often doesn't even give any indication that they're going to go. They'll just, instead of doing the whole sniff circle, they're just going to go like, ooh, I'm feeling a little pressure. So that's kind of how she can be on the deck. So we try to make sure that if it's about time to maybe take her out, within, an hour, half hour, that we probably shouldn't leave her completely unsupervised. And it's just chilly enough that I don't want the heat to kick on by leaving the door open. So I don't want to have the door open, me supervising her, the house getting colder, wasting oil. And wow, that was a long ass explanation for why I have her still inside. But that's a little glimpse into my life of being a pet parent. So speaking of, I was kind of proud of her this weekend because she did have a dog when I was at the barbecue that was harassing her. There's a lot of stuff I'm going to go into the barbecue, but some of it's kind of personal. But I don't mind never sharing the dog stuff. So the dog stuff is always, fair game. And so there is a dog that is, uncut, and so he super loves females, not necessarily always in the most friendly way. Sometimes he'll just keep on bugging them and bugging them and bugging them until the dog finally is just like, "Would you f off? F off." And I guess the reason why I bring it up, even though you might be sick of me talking about, God, the noises that are coming out of me. They're not even dad noises. They're just like annoying, distracting noises. There's another. So, um, to the untrained eye, you might look at her telling this other dog to F off and be embarrassed, which I still kind of was because she wasn't allowed to go off leash too many times because she didn't have as good of a recall. We didn't practice come training with her, and so for her to come back to us, she was too overwhelmed and excited, and too many other distractions going on that she didn't have that repetitious training in her. So she wasn't recalling. So it took a little chasing down and getting her back on the leash. So we didn't do as much off leash as we would have preferred. But the way that she handled herself with the other dog, I was very impressed with. So the other dog was definitely at least a good 10, no, 15, I think 15 pounds on her. So I think she's 50, and I think that the dog was at least 65 pounds. Full pity, big head, and definitely was trying to mount her, not necessarily for sexuality purposes, but just for a dominance thing, so that if she ever did go into heat, which she won't because she's fixed, but if she ever did go into heat, he was just like, "This is my role right here." So he was doing that to her on a fairly consistent basis to the point where she was fed up with it, and so she told him to f off in as clear a way as possible, and he would, and he would trot back, and she would have to do it again, and so. To an untrained pet parent, they might be embarrassed at their female dog and be like, he's just trying to play and she's just telling him to f off and trying to protect mom and dad. I'm so sorry, I'm embarrassed. Maybe I'll just like set them to the side or separate them, and that would be the last thing you want to do. Don't separate them. If she's learned a way to tell the other dog to f off, then she's got that power. And then if you do separate them, then she's gonna be like, oh, so there was more to it than what I originally thought. Like you separated us, so maybe like he was actually trying to attack me, or he was actually trying to do something, you know, um, more extreme than what I originally thought based on the initial interaction. And so the next time they come together, they might misread what's going on and have things escalate each time you separate them, and then it escalates each time you separate them. So sometimes it is best if you have the trained eye to let them work it out themselves, because they're going to come to an agreement without you interfering. If you interfere, they might misread, oh, mom had to interfere because you actually were trying to come after me, and so the next time I might have to actually bite. Like, so oftentimes that is the root cause of bad dog interactions, where one of them has to come away with stitches, one of them has to get on a list, one of them has to get put down, and it's all because initially you had the best of intentions, but then it ended up being that you were separating them because you misread what was going on. It was literally the dogs learning how to communicate with each other. If she told him to f off enough times and he didn't, and then she actually did nip him, a quick nip is so much different than a where skin gets torn. It's just like a quick nip is just like a f off, dude. I told you once. And dogs have thick skin. There's probably not going to be any blood drawn, and even if so, they're going to scab over real quick. If that was a lesson that it took for the male dog to finally just f off, I'm sorry, but that's how they do. Like we especially these days, we cannot look at dogs in the way that we look at other people, especially because the way that we look at other people right now, we are getting into the ridiculous weeds when it comes to how we expect others to conform to completely brand new setup standards that didn't exist yesterday, and then to have us supposed to all of a sudden, you know, know the lay of the land and the wind. It's just like it comes to a certain point where it's just like it feels like even the most good-natured person is going to try not to overstep their bounds and offend somebody, and then when you realize that you just said, "Hey guys," in a podcast, and then this women group just went after you because they were like, "Oh, hey guys, you don't think you have any women viewers?" And I was just like, I didn't mean it. I mean, like I've always said, "What's up, guys?" Like to a group in general, and have always understood that the females are involved in that too. Like I've always used guys as an all-inclusive thing. Well, okay, but that's not all right because you're using a male, pronoun to include everybody, so you're actually reducing, the worth of the females, and it's just like, okay, but that's not how I intended it, right? Like, so even if that's the case, and wow, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I didn't realize that in a way, yeah, okay. So in a way, always having male dominant things to include the whole group, in a way, maybe back in the day, like, has always just been like this, like, micro way of, making it more of a male society by saying, hey guys, and that includes the girls as well. But technically, it said guys, and guys is generally understood as a guy thing and a male thing. Okay, I didn't realize that. But can you not cancel me? Because I hope that you would realize if you knew me as a person, that's not how I meant it. I meant it in a very non-offensive way. In fact, one of the least offensive ways that I would have thought. So it's not that I don't want change and improvement and awareness to happen, but I feel like the coming down on people when if you knew the person that the intent was nothing malicious, and also if you come down on a person from 30 years ago, like honestly, let's everybody just take a quick look at their teens and their 20s and tell me that if you got caught for everything that had done, it wasn't acted upon, but you got caught doing it. There's video, there's footage of what you did in your teens and your 20s. Everything, every little trying to find out about the world thing. I'm not going to get into specifics, but like you're already thinking of some examples. And then 30 years later, in a much more sensitive culture, it was put in front of a court. How much time do you think you would get? And now, if you were involved in that, and then you were then put on the jury, I mean, I hope that you would be a little bit more forgiving. I guess is what I'm trying to say. I never know what's going to happen when I do these. If I don't plan them out ahead of time, like I did with the book of phrases and stuff, and it's interesting to find out that apparently I do have a lot of you know um, annoyance in my heart. I always like to think of myself as a pretty carefree, happy-go-lucky guy. I can be a blast at parties. People that have seen me at parties can arguably say the opposite. That's fine, but I I definitely just try to have this be a free form association, whatever the heck they call it when you were doing the way back in the day when you were in grade school and they would do those writing lessons and then they would say just put pen to paper, whatever comes out comes out. There's no wrong answers. I like to look at this as that, and it's weird that I didn't even realize this was something that was bugging me, but then all of a sudden it just comes out. But that is something where, you know, for instance, James Gunn, wasn't able to do Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I feel like he's been forgiven at this point, but that was an over exaggeration. I feel. I mean, that was him. Like, was it 10 years before? Anyway, the point is that at the time he was trying to be kind of like like I think that he did whatever he did around the time that Howard Stern being a shock jock was kind of at the height of its popularity. So he was just like, oh, if I shock them, if I say something shocking, then and then it'll get a laugh or it'll get attention or whatever. And so then if you just take it way out of context later on, that's the thing. All right, so with comedy, I'm just gonna say it from here on out. You should never be able to pull a quote of comedy out of context because it's just not gonna work. It's just not gonna be fair, and it's gonna kill comedy. And I don't think that humanity can survive without comedy. Um, Life is fucking tragic. I'm just gonna come out and start dropping f bombs. Life is ultimately fucking tragic. There's not a single person who has been able to escape death in the history of humanity, in the history of life, in the history of known existence. So because ultimately it's going to end in tears. Laughter is about the only thing besides, well, I mean, it's not the only thing, but it's one of the more important things. Appreciation of beauty, uh, you know, continuing the family line. Like there's many important things, but um, there's a reason why at moments of extreme anxiety and tragedy and sadness and like darkness, that that's when you're most susceptible to comedy. Like, oh god, I wish I could come up with some examples, but like, if somebody's just died and then you just crack a stupid joke, and like even though you're in the middle of sobbing your heart out, like where all you think that you can ever think about again is not having that person in your life anymore. And then somebody cracks the most ridiculous, stupid joke, some maybe even offensive, and like you just can't help yourself and you laugh. And for that split moment, you feel a little bit better. Ultimately, I think that's what comedy's about. It's just knowing that the world is shit, it's chaos. You just got to be kind, and one of the best ways you can do that is trying to get somebody to laugh. And I don't know if you remember the last time that you laughed to the point that you cried, but I think that there's some good symbology there. Laughing until the point that you cried. I think that that in of itself just speaks to how closely entwined the two are. And when you do cutting edge comedy, you have to. There's always going to be a line. What's too far? What's not too far? Is it Lenny Bruce? Oh, this is that God. The comedy community is going to come down hard on me for this one. I think is it Lenny Bruce or Lenny Clark? I get the two confused and I shouldn't, but for the one from Marvelous Miss Maisel, like if you look at the comedy now, it isn't really funny at all, but you don't realize, if you went back and rewatched it, it's black and white. He's talking about stuff that you're just like, it wasn't that funny. I mean, but you got to realize that like back in the day, he was getting arrested for it. Like he was getting arrested for spoken word. Like that should be so illegal. Like that's literally the First Amendment, freedom of speech. He was speaking and he was getting arrested for speaking. He was saying it as it is and he was getting arrested. And it's not funny now, but you know, comedy, the best comedy has always been dancing on the edge of the line of what's appropriate and what's not. And sometimes you overstep it and you backpedal, but here's the problem. The line changes over time to the point where you can't know for a fact where the line's going to be 20, 30 years from now. So, bringing up what worked then, like, I'm sorry, but I think that every comedy clip that gets taken out of context needs to have an audio as well. And as soon as you hear the audience laugh, you have to immediately strike that one from the record because you know what? Fuck. I think that that is the most offensive thing I've ever heard in my entire life. How dare you go after gender like that? But 30 years ago, it brought down the house. The person got paid. The person was able to eat, feed their family, have kids of their own, put them through college on that joke. And nowadays, would never tell it. They learned. They learned. They've grown. They've evolved just like the world has. It drives me nuts. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it's gotten down. I mean, I want to end on something light. Can't possibly think of what that could be right now because I'm just so worked up right now, and I do apologize, but that's just something that has just been bugging me, and I don't even know why I need to feel like I say it out loud. I mean, it just seems like common sense, and it seems like a lot of people that I follow have been saying pretty much the exact same thing, but it doesn't seem to be getting much better yet. So maybe hopefully by the time that you watch this or rewatch it, being like old times, that we finally fixed that stupid bug in humanity that has just been um, let's find the next person to shit on, which kills me because you have to be a certain kind of broken, messed up person to want to dedicate yourself to the one of the worst. All right, so one of the best feelings in the world is being the most quote unquote, for those who are just listening, important person in the room. If you're a comedian on stage and you get a huge laugh, you feel like you're the most important person in the room, possibly in the world at that time. I mean, that's just the feeling. To get that feeling, you have to go through 8 or 9 or 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 more of bombing in that room and feeling like shit and feeling like the worst person in the room, feeling like that's the person that some people might want to kill. You have to be a certain kind of person to want to get through that in order to become the person that gave a certain amount of people at that certain time a certain good feeling. And to put yourself through that, I mean, alone should be the punishment. Oh, you made an offensive joke 30 years ago? Well, God bless you, because that means that you probably ate some freaking shit for the majority of those 30 years. So, penance paid. I mean, that, so, yeah, I am honestly so off the rails. Oh my God. Here's my girl. I hopefully. Ah, okay. Maybe that is something nice. So, you gotta love it. So, all right, you know what? So let's end on something positive. Let's get away from comedy for a second. It's a game changer if you do the meal prepping. I know that that's probably like a broken record from if you've been hearing some people talk about it, but I just feel like the stress of like you wake up, you immediately have to focus on like getting showered. If you have a pet, getting the dog fed and walked, getting lunch situated, and then getting to work. Now you have to get to work. Now you have to worry about work. So now you're working, and now you have to worry about that. And now you get out of work, and you have to worry about getting home. And then you get home, and then you want to maybe have a bit of a woosah relaxation. But the thing is, you still got to have dinner. And so if it if during your time off that you can plan for what your dinner for the rest of the week might be, and then just that way you don't have to think about it. You just already have the stuff cut up and then prepped. It's awesome. So we are gonna end on a positive note because shout out to my freaking girl. Oh my god, my baby, my love. She um, made a vegetarian lasagna, which sounds gross, but it actually is really good if you do it the right way. Um, it has enough cheese and oil in it to satisfy. So it's not true vegetarian. Sorry, it's no, it's vegetarian. It's not vegan. It's vegetarian. Um, so instead of any, the point is she pre-made a meal. I saw it in the fridge when I came home. It made my day, and she just sent me a pic, mentioning that in case I hadn't noticed it, and I did notice it. And I'm going to sign off, and then I'm going to text her a glowing thank you, and what do you need me to do to preheat it so that it can be ready when she gets home. But little things like that just honestly make the closing of the day, because it's almost guaranteed that the day is gonna be sucky. I mean, it's gonna be stressful. If you're going to work, there's a reason why it's called work. All right, it isn't called I'm going to joy. I'm going to fun. I'm going to fuck off. You're going to work. All right, and little things like that can make the evening so much better. And this is something she did on her lunch break. She took out the freaking slicer. She pre-sliced all the stuff. I mean, like I appreciate it so much more just knowing, like, looking at this picture, I know what went into it. So, kind of like how if you're a parent and your kid makes you a macaroni uh, cardboard paper thing, you know what I mean? Like, they just glued macaroni onto a piece of construction paper. And if that kid grew up 10 years and then looked at that construction paper once they got into, like, drawing and stuff, and then they might be like, ugh, God, that looks like absolute dog shit. Why did you keep that? And then you have to grow another 10 or 20 years and then have a kid of your own to realize, oh, because I know how crazy and new the world is when you're a kid. And there is about a billion new things that you need to learn about the fact of how the world works. Like, and some of it you might not appreciate right away, And so when you realize just how ADD kids are supposed to naturally be, so don't put them on medication too early. Sorry to get another soapbox. But the fact that that kid sat down and took the half hour to an hour of the tedious gluing macaroni to a piece of paper to form a vague semblance of a creature that means something to them, or they think means something to you. Once you're older, you can picture that time, and you can just think, for that hour of that ADD kid's life, they were thinking solely of me, and they knew that, like, they were making it for me, and they knew that they were, and then after that, it even went beyond that. Then then they were watching it dry and thinking about how I was gonna receive it, and then they had to carry it home and be very careful not to like drop it or like break the macaroni, and then they finally got home and gave it to me. And I'm sorry, but I feel like there's some people that need to hear this. If the most you can muster is "oh nice," then you're a shit parent because you don't realize who cares the quality. Like the fact that the amount of hours of thought of that kid putting into you. I mean, even now, and if you're in a relationship, like look back at that 8-hour workday. Like, how many times did your mind drift over to your significant other? However much it did, it doesn't. That does not, dictate how much you care about them. All right. What if you have a super busy job that requires absolute like laser focus? The point is, once you get older and you realize just how important that is, that somebody that knows you and thought about you for that long, you know, like it means a lot. There's a reason why that macaroni, piece of cardboard is stuck in a friggin' footlocker somewhere for 20 years, and then you pawn through their friggin' stuff after they're dead, and you're just like, you pull it out, and you're just like 30, 40, 50 years later, like they still kept held on to that. Like, why on earth? Like, but then you start breaking down crying because you know that they would pull it out occasionally and think of you, thinking of them, thinking of you. I'm gonna stop before I get emotional. I don't have any non-sponsors. Just shout out to Josh at Sand Dune Creation. Shout out to Truffle Lady. The plan nhcoffee.com. Anybody that I've already done before. I gotta go.